Welcome to today's show. Today I'm going to be breaking down the Jacksonville Jaguars 2019 free agency and off-season details, including the NFL Draft, which is Thursday night. The Jacksonville Jaguars have had a mildly successful off-season so far. The key acquisition was obviously Nick Foles. I said before in the State of a Franchise video that depending on how the Jaguars do and their offseason, including the draft, will determine whether or not they are a playoff team or a Super Bowl team. By the moves that they've made, they are a playoff team currently. I've seen crazier things happen. Example, Nick Foles went in the Super Bowl with the Eagles just a couple years ago. That was pretty crazy. They didn't have the most talented roster, but they had a really good chemistry and great coaching, and it allowed them to get to the next level and beat the Patriots that year. It's possible. It's always possible that this team could do it. And especially with Nick Foles, it's definitely possible. So let's break it down. As far as quarterback is concerned, you have obviously Nick Foles. I think Nick Foles needs to understand that he's stepping into an environment that he's not entirely used to. He did start for the Rams through a trade with Sam Bradford just a few years ago, but it didn't work out well. You can blame Jeff Fisher all you want, but at the end of the day, you're the starting quarterback. Your job is to be a good quarterback, and he didn't play as well as he did just a couple years before when he had the 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions year with the Eagles. So that's on him. Anyway you spin it. As far as your backup, you have Cody Kessler, who was traded to the Jags from the Browns just last year. I don't think he's starter material, but what I saw from him last year, I think he is a solid backup, and he's way more accurate than Blake Bortles ever was, and that's key. As far as your running back group, you have, of course, Leonard Fournette. I think he will come back next year and be great, go back to being a 1,000-yard runner. Behind him, you have Alfred Blue, a proven backup. Thomas Rawls, who has kind of dipped a little bit in the last couple years. I don't know if it's his commitment to playing well, reading the playbook, and understanding how to, do his job. I think he will bounce back. But if he doesn't, it's going to be a total bust, and he won't be on the team next year after if he doesn't bounce back this year as a backup. You have, of course, Benny Cunningham. He's a special teams player kind of guy. And then you have the unknown David Williams from the practice squad of the Denver Broncos last year. I don't expect very much about him, so I'm going to leave it at that. Tommy Bohannon has been released, so the fullback is Dimitri Flowers. He's a little bit of an unknown. He is young, and he is a little bit more athletic than Tommy Bohannon. But it's good that the Jaguars are committed to having a fullback on their roster, especially with the running back like Leonard Fournette, who's a little bit old school. It makes sense to have a fullback on your roster. On your wide receiver core, you have D.D. Westbrook, Marcus Lee, DJ Chark, Chris Conley, Jadon Mickens has come back, and Keelan Cole. I'm not really impressed with Chris Conley. He never proved himself as a third-round pick with the Chiefs. I think this is going to be a one-year deal, and he's going to be gone, just like Dante Moncrief. But as far as this wide receiver group is concerned, maybe you can grab a wide receiver in the later rounds, third, fourth, and just bring in somebody that could potentially somehow make it happen and just pull off some magic and become a starter. This team lacks a true number one receiver. You can say Marcus Lee's your number one receiver, but he's more of a slot guy. Same with D.D. Westbrook. So, these guys need to step up, especially DJ Chark, who was their second-round pick last year. DJ Chark was a huge disappointment. I wasn't very excited about the pick to begin with. If he can vastly improve himself, maybe the pick's worth it. On the offensive line, you have several guys coming back from IR, which obviously makes your offensive line better. With Cam Robinson, a left tackle, I'm very glad they brought back Josh Wells. He is starter material, but it's good to keep him as a swing tackle for right now. You have left guard Andrew Norwell. You have center Brandon Lanier, who I think should actually be playing guard. You have AJ Cann, and then you have Will Richardson, and then Cedric Abouye, who is coming from the Cincinnati Bengals, a former first-round pick bust. Keep him as a backup. In my opinion, any first-round pick as a backup is really good to have. They were a first-round pick for a reason. On the defensive side of the ball, you have defensive end Yannick Ngakoue, and then you have Laurenti McCray and Dwan Smoot. Laurenti McCray is a special teams ace. I don't expect him to play several snaps. As far as Dwan Smoot, a former third-round pick, he needs to also step up. He is a backup, so I don't expect big things, but he does need to improve. The Jaguars could address backup defensive end in the draft at some point, or after the draft and a little bit of free agency, just to pick someone up so you have some solid depth. On the defensive side of the ball with defensive tackle, I'm very glad that Marcel Darius took a pay cut to stay with the team. Obviously, it shows that he thinks this team's going to be very successful, not only this year, but the years ahead. You also have Taven Bryan, who was a first-round pick last year. I was not a fan of a pick, but I do like the fact that he's able to play defensive end and defensive tackle. That is a plus. I think Taven Bryan, because he was a first-round pick, needs to prove himself, and he needs to start. You also have Avery Jones, and then some random guys like Eli Anuki, who was actually from the Houston Texans, and he's a big unknown. I know very little about him. I think he should be released, along with Mike Hughes Jr. On your linebacker side, you have Telvin Smith, Blair Brown on the will linebacker spot. You have Miles Jack, who I think should go back to Sam, where he plays his best. You have Jake Ryan that you brought from the Packers. I think he's going to be good. And then you have Leon Jacobs. I think Leon Jacobs should be a backup. I didn't mind him as a backup, but as a starter, it's too much responsibility for him. And then you have Donald Payne, who's also a special teams ace. On the cornerback spot, this cornerback group is the most talented out of any group in the NFL. You have Jalen Ramsey, AJ Bouye, and DJ Hayden. DJ Hayden is your starting slot corner, and he is a former top 10 first-round pick of the Oakland Raiders. That's impressive. You also have Quentin Meeks, who is an undrafted guy who has quickly proved himself, along with Trey Herndon. And then you have strong safety Ronnie Harrison, who I felt like out of the draft was a total steal, should have been the first-round pick, if not second. And then you have Gerard Wilson, who's starting right now at free safety. I think he should go back to being a backup. I think he's a great backup. I was upset that the Jaguars had to release Tashawn Gibson due to their poor choices made the past offseason last year with players including Blake Bortles. And then you have Cody Davis, who I think can start. In fact, you could have Cody Davis start ahead of Gerard Wilson, in my opinion. The Jaguars were very tight on cap room based on the decisions they made. And so they had a couple players, including Jeremy Parnell, Malik Jackson, Tashawn Gibson, and even Carson Tinker, who were cap casualty that, really caused even more casualty to your cap situation. And so they're very tight. And that's the biggest reason why they were so careful in this free agency. But as far as your draft picks are concerned, you do have the 7th overall pick in the round 1. You have a 1 second round, 2 thirds, 1 fourth, 1 sixth, and 1 seventh. If I'm the Jaguars picking on the first round of the 7th overall pick, I'm trading out of that pick to get more picks. The reason being is because with the Jaguars, they are in a fortunate situation. Yes, they need right tackle. Yes, they need tight end. Those are their 2 top needs. Although there are several players within the tight end group and the offensive tackle group that can play well. And if you had to, you could select one of those guys at those positions in the 2nd round and still get a quality starter. So for the Jaguars, I would trade out of the 7th overall pick, maybe middle round, maybe even late round in the 1st round, and you still can pick your first round pick and grab either a right tackle or a tight end. If you don't do that, what you need to do is take Jawan Taylor or TJ Hawkinson. In my opinion, Jawan Taylor is very talented, but Hawkinson is a better player because not only is Hawkinson a quality receiving threat, he is a true run blocker, and it's very rare in this league right now to see as good of a run blocker tight end come out of a draft like TJ Hawkinson is. This is one of the best tight end prospects I've seen in years. You do not want to miss out on this guy. But let's say, for example, you trade with the Redskins in the first round, who are currently at 15. Redskins give the 7th overall pick. They give you some extra picks, maybe a second or a third, along with your picks. You pick at 15, grab TJ Hawkinson. Then you go into the second round, grab an offensive tackle. There's several guys available. And worst case scenario, Barry Richardson, right tackle of the Jaguars, can start if he has to. If he has to, I do believe he can do it, but it'd be preferable if he was a backup. And then, let's say you get another second round pick. Guess what? You can now grab a wide receiver. You can now get a potentially starting wide receiver. Then you got 2/3. With your 2/3, what you want to do is grab a guard. They've been linked to Nate Davis, who could compete with AJ Cann, who I think AJ Cann would be better off as a swing guard backup. And then with your other third, you can grab that backup defensive end. With your 4th round pick, you can come in and you can grab a corner or a safety. And then in the 6th round, you can do, once again, corner or safety. 7th round, grab yourself a linebacker, just to add depth to the group. Overall, if the Jaguars do exactly what I just said, they will be in very good position to not only be in playoff contention, but based on the players they select in the first 1 through 7 rounds of this 2019 NFL Draft, they could potentially, it's unlikely, but it's still possible they could be a Super Bowl team. A lot has to go right. A lot went wrong last year for the Jaguars. And the year before, in 2017, a lot went right. They have to find replacements at tackle, tight end, honestly guard, because I do not like AJ Cann, and they need to find some guys to compete at safety as well. If they do that in the draft, they'll be in very good position, and we'll be seeing Nick Foles playing deep into the playoffs next year. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to what happens in the NFL Draft.